Hi guys, today we're going to talk about choosing a type of racket. Now this is something that's very difficult if you're coming into the game and you don't know a lot about the rackets, and also if you don't speak Spanish, there's not a lot of content out there for you to choose the right racket. So in this video we're going to go through the different shapes of the racket, the materials that are used, and the factors that will affect which racket you'll choose. Okay, so first we'll look at the shape of the racket. Now often the shape has some characteristics, but it's not always the case, because nowadays the material that you can put inside the racket makes a big factor on whether it's powerful, control, speed, spin, everything like that. So to begin with, we'll look at the three different shapes, and the direct translation from Spanish is diamond shape, teardrop shape, and round shape. So if we take the diamond as an example, it's slightly wider in the top end of the racket, like this. It usually means that the balance of the racket is a little bit further up the head, obviously, as there's more racket at the top. And what that means is that often the racket is slightly more head heavy, and generally you can get a little bit more power with this type of racket. Next, we'll look at the round racket. The round racket is pretty much just circular at the end. It means that the balance of the racket is lower down towards the handle, and it gives a kind of slightly lighter feeling in the head. You might have two rackets that weigh exactly the same, but if the balance is towards the handle, you'll feel that this racket's lighter because there's more weight in the handle and less in the head of the racket. Next, the teardrop shape. Now this is really in between. That's something that you have a slight moving out of the corners of the racket like this, but the balance is a little bit more central, and it really is between those two rackets. It's more of a personal preference, but you end up choosing the shape of the racket depending upon what you like. Next, we'll look at the weight of the racket. Generally, for a men's racket, it will be between 370 and 380 grams. Obviously, heavier rackets, you can get more power if you can swing that racket at the same speed, and that really depends on physically. If you're strong enough and you feel comfortable being aggressive with a heavier racket, then you can opt for that. The ladies' racket is usually between about 340 and 360. Again, the weight of the racket depends on how comfortable you are to go for that. And then you get junior rackets of varying sizes that are between 240 to 280, and you even get some that are adult size rackets that are a bit lighter for slightly older juniors, so that they can then convert to the adult racket quickly after that. Now we'll look at the materials of the racket. So to begin with, the outer frame is usually made of either a fiberglass or a Kevlar. The fiberglass is a cheaper option, Kevlar is slightly more expensive, and it's there for durability. The purpose of it is to protect the racket, and often you saw companies will have a plastic sheath over the top or a metal sheath, and that's really to protect the frame from being cracked. The inside of the racket, now technology here is constantly changing, but for the moment you have a softer foam and you also have an ever rubber, and really you get a combination of the two nowadays in most good rackets. So the ever foam is a little bit firmer, and you get a little bit more responsiveness of the racket with that high quality foam. The soft foam is what they would put in lower quality rackets, and it's obviously a lot cheaper to make. But you get different types of ever foam and different types of mixture. So you can see in some of the rackets that it's white on the inside, and some of the rackets it's black on the inside. That doesn't mean that they're using one or the other. It can still be an ever rubber, it's just a different color, and that will affect the firmness of the racket. Now, if we're looking at the firmness of the racket, the harder the racket, the more power you will get, and the softer the racket, the more control you're going to get on the ball. The purpose of this video is not to sell you a particular type and brand of racket. The aim is to help you make an informed decision. There are so many brands out there, all of them have so many different models that you've got a whole spectrum of different types of racket. Now I know in some countries it's difficult because you don't have stocked demo shops where you can go and borrow a racket and then see how it feels, and often you have to order online. But it's more than likely that you could go down to the club and try some of your friends' rackets, or at least get a feel for what type of racket you're looking for. So you're looking for the shape, whether you want diamond, teardrop or round shape. You want to start hitting with the racket, get a feel for whether you like a harder racket or a softer racket, and really see how heavy or light you want that racket to be. Now, it depends on a few different factors what you might choose. If you've got any elbow or shoulder issues, you might go for a lighter racket and a softer racket. If you've come from tennis and you really like the hard, powerful racket, you might choose one that's got a harder composition. There's not a wrong or right answer. The best way is to test. So I hope this has helped you out. If you've got any questions, please pop them down below, and also let us know which racket you use.